Ladies and gentlemen, in today's video, we're going to talk about what I think is the greatest match for every current championship belt that is active in the WWE. This means we're going to go through every single championship belt that's active on the main roster in NXT, and we're going to talk about what I think has been the best match in WWE history for that particular championship belt. It's very similar to the video that we did yesterday, so if you want to watch something similar to that, make sure that you check out yesterday's video. Goes without saying, this is all opinions, and I would love for you to share your opinions on this, whether you think I'm right or wrong, down in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. All right, folks, that's enough. Let's jump in because this one's a little bit of a lengthy video. Let's start things off by talking about the Women's Tag Team Championship belts. And I'm going to be honest with you, there aren't that many iconic, unforgettable match of the year contenders, melt your face levels of amazing matches that have happened for the Women's Tag Team Championship belts. A huge part of the reason is that these championship belts are still fairly new. They were only introduced into the WWE main roster ecosystem in 2019, but the biggest reason as to why there aren't that many fantastic matches is that even though these championship belts have been around for like 6 years at this point, 4 of those years, it felt like WWE forgot that these belts even existed. Seriously, from like 2020 to like 2024, I didn't even know who the champions were because they would rarely get featured on TV, let alone have matches, let alone appear on PLEs. I swear I wouldn't see these belts for stretches of like 6-7 months at a time. Luckily now, these championship belts are featured significantly more. They appear on PLEs from time to time, and they often have storylines going on. And on top of that, these are belts that flow across all of the different brands, Raw, SmackDown, and even NXT nowadays. That being said, even though the championships are a lot more relevant and they've been putting on some really solid matches in recent memory, I still think that the best Women's Tag Team Championship match was the first one ever for the inaugural Women's Tag Team Champions in an Elimination Chamber in 2019. To this day, it's still the most chaotic, the most unpredictable, and the most unique match that they have had for these Tag Team Championship belts, and I don't think that WWE has topped this match as of yet. On top of that, it was just a great feel-good moment to have Bayley and Sasha Banks become the inaugural Tag Team Champions after they really lit the fire of the women's evolution with their unbelievable, unforgettable, super important feud back in NXT Black and Gold just a couple of years before this. Now let's talk about the World Tag Team Championship belts. And if you remember from my previous video, these championship belts go all the way back to 2002. They were the Tag Team Championship belts that were introduced on SmackDown and were fought over by the incredible SmackDown 6, just putting unbelievably good matches. A couple of years later, Brian Kendrick and Paul London would put on just jaw-dropping matches for these titles as well. Johnny Nitro, Joey Mercury would have incredible matches. These would then become the Raw Tag Team titles, just so that you get an idea of the type of lineage that is behind this belt, because there is over 2 decades worth of matches to pick from. And maybe it's a little bit of recency bias, but I've yet to see a proper traditional tag team match that is better and more consequential and more dramatic than the main event of Night 1 WrestleMania 39 between the Usos and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. This was arguably the best match of that year in a year that had incredibly good matches to compete with. I think this is the best match of that WrestleMania, and it does count for the lineage of this belt because it was for both titles, and the Raw Tag Team titles were currently being held by the Usos there. You know what? I'll be super quick about this because the WWE Tag Team Championship belts, these had the lineage of the SmackDown tag titles. They don't go anywhere near as far back as the previous World Tag titles because these matches only go as far back as 2016. But yeah, it's also this. Like, I'm gonna keep it super easy, super quick. Since the 2016 titles were introduced, they haven't been involved in a better match than this one at WrestleMania 39 between the Usos, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens. The Speed titles, if you want to talk about these, sure. I'll say that the best men's Speed title match that we've had so far is Andrade versus Dragon Lee. Like, objectively, like a super awesome, incredible match where Dragon Lee won the Speed Championship. Like, genuinely, a very, very good match. It's only 5 minutes long, but it's still a fantastic match. And for the women, I'll say Sol Ruca and Jada Parker. I guess the biggest reason is that they actually put this on a PLE as opposed to it being on Twitter. Sure, why not? I'll give it to this. The women's Speed title hasn't had very many matches, unfortunately. The NXT Tag Team Championships has had literally dozens of incredible, unforgettable match of the year matches. Fraxium alone put on like 7 match of the year contenders with these tag titles when they were champions not that long ago. And in like the middle portion of NXT Black and Gold, these were often so good in terms of their matches and the storylines that they were telling that they would sometimes main event the takeovers, which was the NXT pay-per-views back in the day, over the world titles. And to this day, I haven't seen a more dramatic, a more amazing, a more tear-inducing match than the Revival versus DIY at NXT TakeOver Toronto. I'm 100% biased when it comes to this because I was there. I got to witness it with my own eyes. To this day, like still one of the greatest pieces of live professional wrestling that I ever got to lay my eyes on. This match is absolutely incredible. It has it all. The drama at the end is one of like the most dramatic finishes to a tag team match that I've ever seen. And this was WWE's developmental. This was at the height when NXT takeovers were on the same weekend as main roster PLEs, and they would steal the show. They would just be better than whatever the WWE main roster was doing. And on that weekend, that was the weekend of WWE Survivor Series 2016. This match was the one that everyone was talking about that weekend. Nothing that happened at Survivor Series. The Women's North American Championship, this thing is like literally like brand new. It's barely a year old. So we haven't really had too many opportunities to have iconic matches, but they've already had one, like genuinely an iconic match. Easily the best match is the Kalani Jordan Sol Ruca match at NXT Heatwave. Like genuinely, this thing is just such an unbelievably good match and was just such a reminder of how good wrestling is going to be for the women's division moving forward. Like the future is set, the future is protected if we're putting on matches with the quality of Sol Ruca and Kalani Jordan. And they were both still like fairly new, fairly fresh. They are both better, like by magnitudes. I would love for them to run this match again. And they have run this match again, and it was good. And I hope that we get to see this match for years to come on the main roster because the magic that these two put on at Heatwave was absolutely sensational. The Women's United States Championship, on the other hand, hasn't particularly been treated very well. It's been around now for almost a year, if you can believe it. We're coming up on a year of WWE United States Championship matches in the women's division, and I think I can count the championship matches just on these little beautiful fingers right here because there haven't been very many. And the ones that we have had haven't really gotten enough time to really get going. They don't really get like the proper shine that like the Women's Intercontinental Championship has gotten this far, which is a shame because I know that if they really put an effort into this championship belt, that it could put on some of the best matches in the women's division. The best match so far to me is Julia versus Zelina Vega, the rematch after Julia had already won the United States Championship belt. This was actually an anger-inducing match for me because this match was solid, like a really, really good match. And it just reminded me, like, why are we not having these matches more often? Why aren't these women getting an opportunity? When they do get an opportunity, they were lights out. Like, this is far and away the best match in the US Women's Championship history, even though it's not very long, but it's a sore reminder of how little opportunities they get. But when they do get an opportunity, they can put on an absolute clinic. The Women's Intercontinental Championship, on the other hand, has gotten all of the opportunities. Maybe not as many early on when Lyra Valkyria was champion, but when Becky Lynch entered the equation, this thing exploded in terms of its notoriety, how often it appeared on Raw, how often it appeared on a PLE. It went through a stretch where it like appeared on every single PLE after WrestleMania, and that to me is just so impressive. There's been so many solid matches just between these two here, but my favorite of the matches that have happened for the Women's Intercontinental Championship thus far is specifically the Lyra Valkyria versus Becky Lynch match at Money in the Bank. To me, this was graps. Go back and watch this, and it felt like I was watching like wrestling in its truest, rawest form, both in terms of like what was happening in the ring. The fantastic chemistry between Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria was undeniable, but then they also had a really solid story, which is a rarity these days, to where you can have a really solid match in a really solid story. It all came beautifully together at Money in the Bank, and I don't think that WWE has yet to surpass this match for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. The North American title for the men's side on NXT has also had some absolutely iconic matches. Like right off the bat, the North American title ladder match is one that many people talk about. It was my favorite North American Championship match for like a really long time. For like a really long time, that was like the default answer, and I didn't think that anything was gonna top it. Something topped it, and it was fairly recent as well. Brothers, let me tell you, Obafemi versus Josh Briggs versus Dijak has a strong case to be made that this is the best match of 2024. One of WWE's best year, where they were putting on some heaters. I think that you could genuinely sit down and make a strong case that Oba, Briggs, and Dijak was the best match of that year, the best match of that weekend too. We recently watched this on the Patreon, and upon a rewatch, it cemented itself with me. I already thought it was the best North American Championship match, but upon the rewatch, it was like the confirmation of like, okay, yeah, I'm not insane. This is better than the ladder match, and it doesn't need all of like the crazy, super insane spots of the ladder match, because these guys themselves are just human spot machines without the need of insane verticality. Somehow, some way, this is a cruiserweight match, by the way. That's what it feels like when the lightest guy is probably what, like 260 pounds, because all of these guys could fly. Maybe not Obafemi, but Obafemi is able to work really well alongside Josh Briggs and Dijak, who can sometimes just pull out like insane hurricanranas and moonsaults out of nowhere. But yeah, this match absolutely rocks. In fact, just talking about it makes me want to go back and rewatch it again. The United States Championship. Listen, this thing has been around for a really long time. I'm counting like the WWE lineage from like when it was introduced in like 2003 to today. And upon like going back and like really analyzing like all of the best matches, there really aren't that many like super unbelievably good matches for the WWE United States Championship. It was kind of surprising, especially like if you look up lists of the best United States Championship matches, a lot of them are still like fairly dated because there hasn't really been much of a reason to talk about the United States Championship in recent years. Pretty much like the first three matches in most people's lists have something to do with John Cena's Open Challenge. Now, I'm here to tell you that this might be recency bias, and you might be saying, Santi, you're insane, but genuinely, I could not think of a better WWE United States Championship match than what we just saw. Ilya Dragunov versus Sami Zayn was so goddamn good. Not only was the match like just objectively like amazing and fantastic, but like the shock and awe of having the return of somebody as beloved as Ilya Dragunov, but not only have his return happen, but like pull the trigger on the shock championship change that I wasn't expecting. I don't think anybody was expecting Sami Zayn to lose the championship on that particular night to Ilya Dragunov. But yeah, this match absolutely rocks. The thing that to me stands out of this match is how real the hits feel. Like everything from their kicks to their slams to the way that they sell, everything just feels like these guys are in a genuine war of attrition against one another. And don't even get me started on the false counts. When Ilya Dragunov kicked out of like the mid-air haluva kick into a blue thunder bomb, I was certain that the match was done. And on top of that, they teased that with ruining the match. They're like, oh, we're gonna send the MFT matches ruined. You're like, oh, classic WWE, right? Only for them to be like, nah, just kidding. And then just actually finish the match proper was amazing. Chef's kiss. The Intercontinental Championship obviously has a lot of history, a lot of legacy, and maybe, I'm such a like new age WWE fan. I don't know. I've been watching for over 2 decades, and it seems like many of the matches that come to mind in terms of the best matches for these titles are like really modern ones. I do think that like the quality of professional wrestling in terms of like the moves that happen like just continues to get like crazier and crazier and crazier. But what's crazy about this match is that this match is an old school match. It just happened modern day. I'm obviously talking about Gunther versus Sheamus at Clash of the Castle. This is like an 80s, early 90s style of match, even like 70s territory type of match, but they brought that like modern flair and modern storytelling that just made it this like amazing like full package. This is to me easily the best match of that year. Another year, 2023, that WWE had some fantastic matches, because this was when WWE was just not missing. They were hitting every single note, and somehow a lowly Intercontinental Championship match managed to be the best match of that year. The Women's NXT Championship, there's literally one answer, all right? And if we don't have the same answer, then you're just simply wrong. Listen, there's been some fantastic women's matches. There's been some solid ones in recent memory here in the last like 2-3 years. There were some fantastic ones in the early days of NXT, but it always comes down to this one. Sasha Banks versus Bayley. I'm specifically picking the TakeOver Brooklyn match. I'm not picking the Iron Woman match, the 30-minute Iron Woman match. I think that this right here is the best of their series and arguably the greatest women's match to ever take place in a WWE ring. If not the best match to take place in a WWE ring, at the very minimum, people can agree that this has the conversation to arguably be one of the most important matches, not just in WWE history, but like in professional wrestling history, because this was what created the boom of women's professional wrestling outside of the indies in like a mainstream organization in North America like WWE that treated women's wrestling like a joke. All during like the main roster when women would get like 2-minute matches, in comes Sasha Banks and Bayley just putting on a clinic, one of the best matches of the decade. And that to me is like the fork on the road. If this match doesn't happen, I don't know that women's professional wrestling looks the way that it looks like today. This match is amazing, and this match is super, super valuable and important to our fandom of professional wrestling. The Women's World Championship, just again to help you visualize the lineage of this was the Women's SmackDown Championship. So we'll include the lineage of the SmackDown Championship. And once again, I have to go to like fairly modern ones. The two matches that to me stand out as the best women's matches for this title, actually, I'll give you three. One for the Women's SmackDown Championship. That was the last woman standing match between Becky Lynch and Charlotte. That's still fantastic to this day. And then there's the Charlotte and Rhea Ripley match at WrestleMania 39. And then the modern classic that just happened. I still think we're going to be talking about this match for a really long time. Io Sky and Rhea Ripley melted everyone's freaking face off with how good this match was. It was a match with no story either. Like WWE put like no effort into building this match. So it was up to the ladies, Io Sky and Rhea Ripley, to remind you that, hey, even with a bad story, even with nothing in place, even with WWE allowing this show to just sink on its own, we're going to be the life raft that elevates this show with one of the most unforgettable main events to a WWE premium live event that I've ever seen. This match is so fucking good. And then on top of that, it ends in one of the most memorable, iconic ways that a women's match has ended, with the amazing, unbelievable cash-in of Naomi. A cash-in that literally nobody saw coming, because everyone and their dog was expecting her to cash in on a Bianca Belair future world championship run, or when Jade Cargill won the world championship, or maybe on Tiffany Stratton. No one was expecting a cash-in on this match. So for WWE to allow these two to go out and put like a 30-minute clinic on the concept of professional wrestling, and then bookended with one of the most shocking moments in women's professional wrestling history in the WWE. Perfect, 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 perfect. This is the match right here. The WWE Women's Championship has had less good matches. I kind of like go back to like all of the amazing women's matches that we've had for these women's titles, and there's been significantly more better matches for the other title. The SmackDown Tag Title is also the one that had the fantastic Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. So I was kind of like going through all of these matches that have happened for this title, and to me it was kind of like between like two, really. I really loved Charlotte versus Sasha Banks for the Raw Women's title on that episode of Monday Night Raw. I think it was like 2017. But I came down on this one, the WrestleMania 38 classic that was Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship. I don't think that the modern look of the title has put on a better match than this one. Like, you can make the argument of like Bayley versus Io Sky maybe being better, but I like this one more personally. The NXT Championship, I think there's like 6 answers that you could really go with, because like the NXT Championship just went through this like roller coaster of unbelievably good matches for a long time, and they're still doing that. You know, like the NXT World title is still putting on like match of the year contenders on a fairly regular basis. I think it ultimately comes down to your preference, the type of match. Like, do you want like graps? Like, do you want the best in-ring match? To me, that's Andrade and Johnny Gargano take over Philadelphia. Do you want like chaos? Then you can look at the crazy saga that was Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. But if you want story and great graps, I think it comes down to this one. The NXT TakeOver Evolution beautifully told story and match between Adrian Neville, before they forgot that he had a first name, and Sami Zayn. The saga, the story, the build up to this, dude, this was like a WrestleMania 40 build in like WWE developmental. The build up to Sami Zayn finally winning the NXT championship. The thing that comes the closest to in terms of like the methodical build to it is literally Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40. This match rocks from an in-ring perspective, but the emotional storytelling of Sami Zayn getting continuously screwed over, missing out on opportunities, losing matches, not being good enough, and then finally being able to win the big one on NXT against the incredible Adrian Neville is like a level of legendary and unforgettable that like I'll be thinking about this match on my deathbed. Again, I think from in-ring, just in-ring, Andrade and Johnny Gargano is better, but the whole package of like, well, wrestling really is like storyline encompass. This to me is like the quintessential world championship match in NXT. The World Heavyweight Championship. So we learned from the last video that the full lineage of the Big Gold isn't included in this, which again, kind of blows my mind. If we were talking about Big Gold, we'd probably be talking about the WrestleMania 20 main event with Triple H, Benoit, and Shawn Michaels, the fantastic WrestleMania 24 match between The Undertaker and Edge, Undertaker and Batista had a really solid match. To me, the Vengeance Hell in a Cell match between Batista and Triple H is like incredibly fantastic. But if we're only talking about the modern era, the current legacy of this particular belt, it starts with Seth Rollins in 2023, so there really isn't that much. So I kind of like racked my brain around this, right? Like, what do I even give this to? Because from in-ring, I would say that maybe like the best matches that happened for this particular world title are the ones that Seth Rollins has had, especially in his first reign. Like that feud with Shinsuke Nakamura was really solid. The match at SummerSlam 2023 was really, really good. The match against Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 40 with the ending of the cash-in of Damian Priest was really good. But I just, to me, like when I think of this belt, again, super recency bias, I'll give it to just the cash-in. Like straight up, just the cash-in that happened at SummerSlam earlier this year. Gunther versus CM Punk was a solid match in its own right, but like I wouldn't have called that match better than the Seth Rollins matches against Nakamura and Finn Balor. Like Gunther versus Randy Orton was like pretty solid for the world title as well. But like I come down on this, right? Like in terms of like generating pure raw emotion out of me, like the genuine shock and awe that this match, which is a match, even though it's like 2 minutes long, it is a match, and I guess it counts into this. Seth Rollins versus CM Punk at SummerSlam earlier this year is what I'm gonna have as the best World Heavyweight Championship match of the current lineage of the World Heavyweight Championship. And then there's the WWE Championship. Again, I think that this is such a preference thing. It might even come down to like when you were at the height of your fandom as well. Maybe you want to go with like a WrestleMania 40, what happened there with Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. I feel like a lot of people would go with that. A lot of people that have watched for longer might go with like Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart, the Iron Man match. WrestleMania 17 is one that comes to mind between Stone Cold and The Rock. Absolutely. Like there's been some really fantastic, unforgettable, iconic matches for the WWE Championship. So just kind of keep that in mind. I do think that much of it does come down to like when you were like super into this and like the characters that were involved in the story that gripped you the most. So I just don't think that there's a definitive answer for this one. So I'll give you mine. And now that you know that I'm kind of going off of like gut and feeling and people and storylines, you probably know what I'm going with. And I'm going with John Cena versus CM Punk at Money in the Bank 2011. I do think that there are matches that are better from an in-ring perspective, but like I just don't think that WWE, like literally to this day, even the Cody Rhodes WrestleMania 40 saga has been able to replicate a more unique, a more impactful, a more glue your goddamn eyes to the screen storyline than what happened between CM Punk and John Cena in 2011. It's so organic that I just don't think that WWE can replicate it again. You know, we've overused the term once in a lifetime with all of the things that just sort of coalesce, the pipe bomb, the ending of CM Punk's contract, Cena being the champion that everyone is tired of, CM Punk blowing up in popularity. All of this was a perfect storm that I just don't think WWE will, and again, I don't use this word lightly, ever be able to replicate again. On top of that, it is just an objectively like very good match in ring with one of the hottest crowds that I've ever seen in my life. If you care about Dave Meltzer's ratings, this was like WWE's first 5-star match in like 15 years. All right, like he never gave WWE matches 5 stars, and even he gave it to this one. But yeah, for me, it's always been this one. But again, I just don't think that there's a correct answer. I feel like it's so subjective. All of this is subjective, but especially with the WWE Championship, I feel like there's a higher level of subjectiveness based on like the characters that are involved, the story that impacted you the most, and when you were, and at what stage of your life you were watching WWE. Woo! We'll leave it there. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Take care. Goodbye. Get out of here.